Hello, welcome to another First Chapter Friday. Today's story is one that is a whole series, very popular in the past. Disney optioned it. I don't think any movies were made, but the book is I'd Tell You I Love You, but Then I'd Have to Kill You, and it's by Ali Carter. Okay. Chapter 1. I suppose a lot of teenage girls feel invisible sometimes, like they just disappear. Well, that's me, Cammie, the chameleon. But I'm luckier than most because at my school, that's considered cool. I go to a school for spies. Of course, technically, the Gallagher Academy for Exceptional Young Women is a school for geniuses, not spies. And we are free to pursue any career that befits our exceptional educations. But when a school tells you that, and they teach you things like advanced encryption in 14 different languages, it's kind of like a big tobacco company telling kids not to smoke. So all us Gallagher girls know lip service when we hear it. Even my mom rolls her eyes but doesn't correct me when I call it spy school. And she is the headmistress. Of course, she's also a retired CIA operative, and it was her idea for me to write this. My first covert operations report, to summarize what happened last semester. She's always telling us that the worst part of spy life isn't the danger, it's the paperwork. After all, when you're on a plane home from Istanbul with a nuclear warhead in a hot box, the last thing you want to do is write a report about it. So that's why I'm writing this, for practice. If you've got a level 4 clearance or higher, you probably know all about us Gallagher girls, since we've been around for more than 100 years. The school, not me. I'll turn 16 next month. But if you don't have that kind of clearance, then you probably think we're just an urban spy myth, like jetpacks and invisibility suits. And you drive by our ivy-covered walls, look at our gorgeous mansion and manicured gardens, and assume, like everyone else, that the Gallagher Academy for Exceptional Young Women is just a snooty boarding school for bored heiresses with no other place to go. Well, to tell the truth, we're totally fine with that. It's one of the reasons no one in the town of Roseville, Virginia, thought twice about the long line of limousines that brought my classmates back to campus last September. I watched from a window seat on the 3rd floor of the mansion as cars materialized out of the blankets of green foliage and turned through the towering wrought iron gates. The half-mile-long driveway curved through the hills, looking as harmless as Dorothy's yellow brick road, not giving a clue that it's equipped with laser beams that read tire treads and sensors that check for explosives, and one entire section that can open up and swallow a truck whole. And if you think that's dangerous, don't even get me started about the pond. I wrapped my arms around my knees and I stared through the window's wavy glass. The red velvet curtains were drawn around the tiny alcove, and I was enveloped by an odd sense of peace, knowing that in 20 minutes the halls were going to be crowded, music was going to be blaring, and I was going to go from being an only child to one of 100 sisters. So I knew to savor the silence while it lasted. Then, as if to prove a point, a loud blast and a smell of burning hair came floating up the main stairs from the 2nd floor Hall of History, followed by Professor Buckingham's distinguished voice crying, "Girls, I told you not to touch that!" The smell got worse, and one of the 7th graders was probably still on fire, because Mrs. Buckingham yelled, "Stand still! Stand still, I say!" Then Professor Buckingham said some French swear words that the 7th graders probably wouldn't understand for at least 3 semesters. And I remember how every year during new student orientation, one of the newbies will get cocky and try to show off by grabbing the sword that Gillian Gallagher used to slay the guy who was going to kill Abraham Lincoln. The first guy, that is. The one that you never hear about. But what the newbies aren't told on their campus tour is that Gilly's sword is charged with enough electricity to, well, light your hair on fire. I just love the start of school. I think our room used to be an attic once upon a time. It has these cool dormers and oddly shaped windows, and lots of little nooks and crannies where a girl can sit with her back against the wall and listen to the thundering feet and squeals of hello that are probably pretty standard at boarding schools everywhere on the first day of school after summer break. But they probably stop being standard when they take place in Portuguese and Farsi. Out in the hall, Kim Lee was talking about her summer in Singapore, and Tina Walters was declaring that Cairo was super cool, Johannesburg, not so much, which is exactly what my mom had said when I'd complained about Tina's parents, who were taking her to Africa over the summer, whereas I was going to have to visit my dad's parents on their ranch in Nebraska, an experience I'm fairly sure will never help me break out of the enemy interrogation facility or disarm a dirty bomb. "Hey, where's Cammie?" Tina asked, but I wasn't about to leave my room until I could come up with some fish story to match the international exploits of my classmates, 70% of whom are daughters of current or former government operatives, aka spies. Even Courtney Bauer had spent a week in Paris, and her parents are both optometrists. So you can see why I wasn't especially eager to admit that I'd spent 3 months plopped down right in the middle of North America cleaning fish. I'd finally decided to tell them about the time that I was experimenting with average household items that can be used as weapons and accidentally decapitated a scarecrow. Who knew knitting needles could do that kind of damage? When I heard a distinctive thud of luggage crashing into a wall and a soft southern, "Oh, Cammie, come out, wherever you are." I peered around the corner and I saw Liz posing in the doorway, trying to look like Miss Alabama, but bearing a greater resemblance to a toothpick in capri pants and flip-flops. A very red toothpick. She smiled and said, "Did you miss me?" Well, I did miss her, but I was totally afraid to hug her. What happened to you? We settled at our usual table in the grand hall, and I finally felt at home. Of course, I'd actually been back for 3 weeks, but my only company had been the newbies and the staff. The only thing worse than being the only upperclassman in a mansion full of 7th graders is hanging out in the teacher's lounge watching your ancient languages professor put drops in the ears of the world's foremost authority on data encryption while he swears he'll never go scuba diving again. Ew, mental picture of Mr. Moskowitz in a wetsuit. So gross. Since a girl can only read so many back issues of espionage today, I usually spent those pre-semester days wandering around the mansion, discovering hidden compartments and secret passageways that are at least 100 years old and haven't seen a good dusting in about that long. Mostly I tried to spend my time with my mom, but she was super busy and totally distracted. Remembering this now, I thought about Bex's mysterious absence, and I suddenly began to worry that maybe Liz had been onto something. And then Anna Fetterman squeezed onto the bench next to Liz and asked, "Have you seen it? Did you look?" Anna was holding a blue slip of paper that instantly dissolves when you put it in your mouth. Even though it looks like it will taste like cotton candy, it doesn't, trust me. I don't know why they're always putting our class schedules on evapor paper. Probably so we can use up our stash of the bad-tasting kind and move on to the good stuff, like mint chocolate chip. But Anna wasn't thinking about the evapor paper flavor when she yelled, "We have covert operations!" She sounded absolutely terrified, and I remember that she was probably the only Gallagher girl that Liz could take in a fistfight. I looked at Liz, and even she rolled her eyes at Anna's hysterics. After all, everyone knows that sophomore year is the first time that we get to do anything that even approaches the actual field work. This is our first exposure to real spy stuff. but Anna seemed to be forgetting that the class itself was sadly kind of a cakewalk. I'm pretty sure we can handle it, Liz soothed, prying the paper from Anna's frail hands. All Buckingham does is tell horror stories about all the stuff she saw in World War II and show slides. Remember? Ever since she broke her hip, she's... But Buckingham's out, Anna exclaimed, and this did get my attention. I'm sure I stared at her for a second or two before saying, Professor Buckingham is still here, Anna, not adding that I'd spent half the morning coaxing Onyx, her cat, down from the top shelf at the staff library. That's gotta be just a start-of-school rumor. There were always plenty of those, like how some girl got kidnapped by terrorists, or one of the staff members won $100,000 on Wheel of Fortune. Though, now to think of it, one of those was actually true. No, Anna said. You don't understand. Buckingham's doing some kind of semi-retirement thing. She's going to do orientation and acclimation for the newbies. But that's it. She's not teaching anymore. Wordlessly, our heads turned, and we counted the seats at the staff table. Sure enough, there was an extra chair. Then who's teaching Cove Ops? I asked. Just then, a loud murmur rippled through the enormous room as my mom strolled through the doors of the back of the hall, followed by all the usual suspects. The 20 teachers that I'd been looking at and learning from the past 3 years. 20 teachers, 21 chairs. I know I'm a genius, but you do the math. Liz, Anna, and I all looked at each other and then back at the staff table as we ran through the faces and tried to comprehend that extra chair. One face was new, but we expected that because Professor Smith always returns from summer vacation with a whole new look, literally. His nose was larger, his ears more prominent, and a small mole had been added to his left temple, disguising what he claimed was the most wanted face on 3 continents. Rumor has it that he's wanted by gun smugglers in the Middle East, ex-KGB hitman in Eastern Europe, and a very upset ex-wife somewhere in Brazil. Sure, all of this experience makes him a great countries of the world, COW, professor, but the best thing Professor Smith brings to the Gallagher Academy is the annual anticipation of guessing what face he will assume in order to enjoy his summer break. He hasn't come back as a woman yet, but it's probably just a matter of time. The teachers took their seats, but the chair stayed empty as my mother took her place at the podium in the center of the long head table. Woman of Gallagher Academy, who comes here? She asked. And then every girl at every table, even the newbies, stood and said in unison, We are the sisters of Gillian. Why do you come? My mother asked. To learn her skills, honor her sword, and keep her secrets. To what end do you work? To the cause of justice and light. How long will you strive? For all the days of our lives, we finished. And I felt a little like a character in one of my grandmother's soap operas. We sat back down, but Mom remained standing. Welcome back, students, she said, beaming. This is going to be a wonderful year here at Gallagher Academy. For our newest members, she turned to the table of 7th graders who seemed to shiver under her intense gaze. Welcome. You're about to begin the most challenging year of your young lives. Rest assured that you would not have been given this challenge were you not up for it. To our returning students, this year will mark many changes. She glanced at her colleagues and seemed to ponder something before turning back to face us. We have come to a time when... But before she could finish, the doors flew open. And not even 3 years of training at spy school prepared me for what I saw. Before I say anything more, I should probably remind you that I go to a girls' school. That's all girls, all the time. With a few ear-dropping needing, plastic surgery getting, male faculty members thrown in for good measure. But when we turned around, we saw a man walking in our midst who would have made James Bond feel insecure. Indiana Jones would have looked like a mama's boy compared to this man in a leather jacket with 2 days' growth of beard, who walked to where my mother stood, and then, horror of horrors, he winked at her. "Sorry I'm late," he said as he slid into the empty chair. His presence was so unexpected, so surreal, that I didn't even realize that Bex had squeezed into the bench between Liz and Anna, and I had to do a double take when I saw her and remembered that 5 seconds before she had been MIA. "Trouble, ladies?" she asked. "Where have you been?" Liz demanded. "Forget that," Anna cut in. "Who is he?" But Bex was a natural-born spy. She just raised her eyebrows and she said, "You'll see." Chapter 2. Oh my gosh, what a cliffhanger. So it turns out every chapter in this book is a cliffhanger type. And it was something that I read a long time ago, but I had to bring it back to you guys who maybe haven't heard of this great series, because I need to do that. I need to expose you to the great books that maybe, got missed just because you weren't born at the right time. All right, and it does have romance. It does have a lot of, fun things to just be red herrings and stuff. It is a book that has like an entire mission in it, and then so won't the other books. So you can read them by themselves, but definitely better if you start now and then read the whole series. So I hope you will pick the book up yourselves, find out what happens next, find out what that covert mission was for her semester that the whole report's about, and I hope you have a great week. Thank you for joining me to hear about this story. Take care now.